Welcome to the Transnormal podcast. This is the very beginning of what Laura and I believe is going to be an incredible movement. Want to introduce you all a little bit to us. So, I'm Joe Ellis. I am the Black Hawk pilot that was accused of that horrific accident in DC. And because of that, I had a public profile, and I realized there was a big problem with the trans movement in general. And so I realized that there's nobody advocating for normal. It's either extreme left or extreme right. And so what I wanted to do is partner with someone and advocate for not left or right, but just reasonable. And Laura, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so thanks, Joe. I'm Laura Tragonic. I'm actually a physician. I'm been working up in Canada for the last 25 years and working in a field that has nothing at all to do with trans politics. I'm actually focused on inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, and I'm also a mom of three. And my politics have always tended to be more on the left, more on the liberal progressive side. But someone, because I'm a scientist who's always tried to look at the data and see where things are going and try to always come into any issue with kind of an open mind. And what I've been noticing over the last few years is a lot of the issues that the progressive side has been pushing have not really lined up with the data. And I really wanted to take a more centrist approach to how we talk about trans politics and how we talk about trans issues and how they intersect with modern society. Part of the challenge has always been that the conversation tends to get dominated by people with extreme views. And when people with extreme views talk, they don't really talk to each other at best. They talk past each other. And I thought it was so important to create a space for people who are non-ideological, for people who are reasonable, and people who can relate to the general population to be able to talk about these issues in a very calm setting and to take a very non-ideological approach and try to present all the sides of the issues and let the people who are listening to us decide where they stand.
You bring up an interesting point. You say you're from the left and more progressive, and you're also from Canada, whereas I actually come from a conservative
They don't let you in
background.
otherwise. Yeah.
Right, yeah. I come from a conservative background and from the south of the US. So it's almost like we're meeting in the middle already, just with our two different backgrounds. A little bit more about me. So when I'm not serving my country in the Army National Guard as a warrant officer, I am working in IT for a private company. So just leading a team of nerds, as I say. And other than that, I like to skateboard. I like to play musical instruments. I like to do all sorts of things. I'm big into CrossFit and health and fitness space. And that's pretty much about me. So I'm really excited to be here with you, Laura, and I'm really excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, no, I was just sort of thinking today because I know you're a CrossFit person. I try to stay fit, but I'm probably, if I ever had to do anything with you, I would let you, I would let you take the first punch, to be honest. But I was actually almost, I met some friends for brunch today, and they were uh, part of the plan originally today was to go for a hike and then go for brunch, and then we kind of realized the weather was terrible, so they said, like, let's do a CrossFit class, and I'm kind of like, how about we just do brunch? uh, and so
I wish you had done one. Did you not do it?
I didn't, but maybe at one point, if we can ever get together, you can be my CrossFit guide,
Oh,
and
that
you
would
can
be
make
amazing. Yeah, I can
yeah.
convert you to the cult. I grew up homeschooled and then I joined the military. So I feel like I just go to cults one after another. I went from the homeschool cult to the military cult, which some people call it a cult, and then CrossFit as well. And I joke, of course, but yeah, I love CrossFit. It's so much fun. And
Yeah.
the running joke is, how do you know someone that does CrossFit? Is don't worry, they'll tell you.
Here we are.
Here
But
we
yeah,
are.
no, my when I'm like I try to, like as I said, I try to stay fit, but I'm mostly focused. Like I do a lot of long distance running. I do road cycling, at least when the weather goes. I do a lot of cross country skiing in the winter.
Oh,
Of
wow.
course, being up in Canada, we certainly have the weather for it. And if I have the time, and it's really hard to find the time now between all the things that have been going on. But I used to take sort of like 5-day trips and go do road biking down in the American Southwest, which is like my favorite part of the world.
Oh, wow.
Although being from Canada, getting a little more edgy about coming to the States. I'm hoping you
Because
get
of
your
all
axe
my
fixed
guns?
soon.
Is that why?
Not necessarily because of the guns, although I have to say I'm not a gun person. Also, being from Canada, I've fired a single bullet in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I got invited out and I guess it's weird to say it out, like boys' weekend at the cabin. And one of the guys there had a gun, which is sort of a fairly unusual thing for Canada. And we decided we were going to go out into the woods and like shoot at trees. And I fired this once, and I've always been a fairly like diminutive type person. And I was not expecting when you fired the gun, it's a pretty powerful thing. It turns out. And I just thought, well, it's a light thing, I've just sort of held it out, and they're like, hold on to that thing tight. And I'm like, yeah, I got this. And so I fired the gun. And of course I went like, as you probably know, Joe, being in the military, if you're not careful, you get like wham, right in the middle of
a little kickback.
I got a little bit of kickback.
Yeah.
And that was my sort of gunfire experience. I'm like, that was fun, but I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. And I've kept my word so far. But no, it's not. It's not the guns. It's sort of. I'm actually more afraid of going over the border and just getting like horribly questioned by border agents.
Yeah. Nice. Well, call me if you get stuck at the border. Maybe I can pull some strings. I don't know.
Yeah, probably you more than anyone else I know. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, no, I love guns. I love shooting. I've got a few. And then, of course, pro Second Amendment, reasonable Second Amendment laws, and then also just like to conceal carry, especially after the rumor started about me being a trans terrorist, and it kind of elevated my profiles. So I always carry now unless I'm going somewhere where I'm not allowed to, and that helps keep a little bit of peace of mind. I'm a big girl, and I'm CrossFit and fit and stuff, but you just never know. Like, it doesn't matter how big and fit you are. If enough people or enough blunt objects come your way, you're going to get screwed. All right, so Laura, go ahead and kick us off.
Bathrooms have become one of the battlegrounds in the changing landscape of trans rights in the United States. In 2023, Florida was the first state to pass into law a bathroom ban. And in the last 2 years, multiple states have passed laws similar to Florida's under the premise that natal women need to be protected from the ostensible threat that trans women posed to them in vulnerable spaces. And there have been a few high-profile cases of people who may have been trans or may have been pretending to be trans who have behaved badly in these spaces. And it's understandable why some women might have a fear of strange-looking and strange-acting people in places where they feel vulnerable. A recent poll suggests that Americans are split right down the middle in terms of whether they support bathroom bans, and the trajectory suggests that there is less and less support for people like myself and Joe here to be able to continue to use the women's bathroom, something I've been doing without incident for nearly a quarter century. Despite the passage of these laws, until recently there have been no documented arrests or prosecutions under these bans. That was the case until this past month, when our guest today was arrested while attempting to use the women's washroom at the Florida State Capitol in Tallahassee. We are absolutely thrilled to be joined today by that young woman, a college junior named Marcy Rheintgen. I want to thank Marcy for joining us here today and giving us the honor of being her first extended interview since this episode. Marcy, welcome to Transnormal.
Hi.
Hello. Just give us the full summary, like what happened and what brought you here today.
I think from someone who's like the outside looking in, this may seem like a very like intentional, philosophical, very like, oh, I'm going to be Rosa Parks, oh, I'm going to do this, oh, I'm going to do that. But I think the world can be a lot more chaotic than that. And honestly, I'm like a very emotional person. And all this, like, a lot of like the just pure sort of ugly hatred of us I've been seeing lately, like, just made me feel sick. And especially, honestly, I keep saying this, but the stuff with Hunter Schafer was really like a tipping point for me of like, oh my gosh, people are applauding this happening to her, because she's like one of my heroes. And I don't know, I was like, you know what, I'm going to break their stupid law, and you know what, I might go to jail, just because like, I kind of felt like if I didn't go to jail now, I was going to go to jail later, like,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
And I felt like I had to do something. And so I'm a very old-fashioned person. I type on a typewriter a lot of time. Actually, I've written a lot on typewriter, but I felt emails. People want to hold something. People want to be able to have something physical. I think everything being digitalized is a great tragedy. Because if we were wiped out by a nuke tomorrow, all of our knowledge would be lost. Everything about us would be lost and forgotten.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm trying to understand is, so you're So I'm just trying to set the scene of how this happened. You're obviously down in Florida. I
Mhm.
understand this was during
Spring
spring break,
break.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was on
So this is,
spring break.
now you weren't
Yeah.
going to Tallahassee for spring break, I
And it was
imagine.
kind of looming over me the whole time, like during my spring break of, oh my gosh, am I gonna do this? What's gonna happen? And then there sort of eventually formed a conclusion because there was this sort of middle point of what's gonna happen, what's gonna happen. And then I thought, nothing's gonna happen. These people don't read their letters. And even if they did, they would understand that this would just be like a terrible idea. They seen the picture of me. I linked a picture of me in it, and I kind of thought that like it'll be fine. And maybe I was naive. People keep calling me on the internet. People keep saying I'm naive, which is, I mean, pretty accurate. I think foolhardy is a good word to describe what I did because it was both like brave and stupid. But I just kind of was like, I guess I'm just gonna break the law. And
Like, did you tell anybody you were going to do this, or is this kind of like this was like all
I told,
interior?
yeah, I mean, this I told all the Congress people of Florida, like the state Congress people, not like the federal Congress people. I wrote them letters. I in case I was going to get to jail and no one was going to know about it and I wouldn't have like anyone with power to do anything about it, I told a journalist, Romy, can't pronounce her last name, from the Tampa Bay Times. And I also told like 5 friends, but I didn't even, but those were just people I knew who would be able to look out for me if something bad happened. I even tell my parents because I knew they were going to worry a lot. And I kind of hinted, maybe I'm going to do something, but I love my parents a lot and I don't want to give them extra stress. And I knew they were going to freak out, which they did. They're still mad at me, which is valid, because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm their kid and I might go to prison now. Like,
Yeah, no, I know the feeling. I've got 3 kids, and on one hand, I want to know everything they're up to, but on the other hand, I'm sort of glad that they don't tell me everything. And I know, like, I was just saying, I come from a Jewish family, and I know my mom, like, I'm in my 50s, she's in her 70s, and there's still times when it's like, when I'm about to do something, it's like, Mom, I'll tell you after and let you know how it goes. So I totally get that impulse. But so you're down in Florida, you're down on your spring break, you're having a good time. And at some point, did you ever think like, okay, I'm not going to go through with this. This is crazy. Um, I'm just going to go. I'm going to get back in the car and drive back home and not be, you know, not become an icon, but just sort of go back to living your college life. Like,
yeah, I mean, I had friends, the friends I told, who were like begging me, don't do this. I know what will happen to you, Marcy. Don't do this. And they're like, it's never too late to go back. But I mean, that was part of why I even told the journalist of like, I wanted it. I know my nature and I know I'm a fearful person. And I knew that if I just kind of had an easy out, I wouldn't do it. Cause I mean, I think a lot of people have thought of what I did before I did it so many times. I was actually talking to well, actually, I can't talk about conversations I had with certain people, but
Right. Yeah.
um,
Keep it safe.
yeah, but you know, I just, I, when I was like the days before, I was like, am I gonna really go to jail? Is this how this is gonna end? This is how my spring break's gonna end. I'm gonna spend it rotting in a cell, you know? And as I was driving there, I was actually, I mean, I really did understand the gravity, but there was a part of me that was like, nothing's gonna happen. This is gonna be fine. And I got there and I was thinking, nothing's gonna happen. This is gonna be fine, But there was just this like poking at me of like, I could go to jail. I could go to prison, you know?
and I'm assuming you've never been to prison before.
No, I'm a goody two shoes.
You're a goody two-shoes. Okay.
I'm very puritanical, actually.
Are you a rule follower like me? Like typically not trying to make a fuss?
Oh yeah. Well, it's not even like a rule follower in that like, I know people who are like rule followers. I'm like a rule follower when it comes to like the catechism or whatever, but like, I don't know, like, I don't know if I think I'm too goofy to be called a rule follower, but
I got you.
yeah.
I was curious about your motivation. You said at first it was kind of the Hunter Schafer thing and a few other things about that. Did your motivation change as you got closer to doing it? Because I know when a lot of our thought processes when we're doing something maybe we're fearful of,
Mhm.
that sometimes the reason why you started it is different than the reason why you finished it. And I was just curious how your mindset worked that whole time. Was it always, did you have like a guiding North Star of this is why I'm going to do it? Or were you just kind of back and forth and maybe ended up somewhere that you didn't start?
Yeah, I think, I've thought about this kind of in the back of my head, like, what if I did this, like, sort of like as a, like, for a while of like, but it was just kind of as I got closer to it, like, it really, I, I mentioned the Hunter Schafer thing, I mentioned all these things, but it wasn't like one concrete thing. It wasn't one concrete action. It was very emotional for me. It was very like, oh my gosh, like things are going to get worse unless someone does something, and I'm willing to put myself on the line to challenge the constitutionality of this law.
Like a test case almost, because someone has to do it first to really challenge it, right?
And also in the public image of, you have a law, someone's eventually going to get arrested for it. I mean, do I want it to be someone who's like annoying and is going to make us look bad in public too, is the other thing? Or if it was me, I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of a normie. I don't want it to be some like, because the point of the law, or I think, is for a charitable take here. The point of the law is to like get the most uppity trannies, but I'm not really generally that uppity, But and I think maybe they could pitch if someone who got arrested for it and they were really ugly about it, they could pitch of, oh hey, this is why we have to have a law. That's why we got to keep
Right.
the bad trannies out of the bathrooms.
Well, I
But
think lawmakers would probably argue that it had nothing to do with trans people, right? It had to do with protecting women
oh
in their
my god,
spaces, right? What would you say to that?
I just think I think that take is so silly because it's really throwing away the argument because like you can't just talk about like the transgender menace or whatever, the transgender agenda all the time and then just be like, this has nothing to do with transgenderism. It's just, we're doing it by sex, you can't, we're just organizing by sex. It's just so ridiculous because this is obviously a
Sure.
discriminatory. This law
No,
wouldn't
yeah, no, I
exist
think it was to discriminate, but
not
what
for
I'm saying
trans
is the
people.
reason
Like,
the reason to discriminate was because they believe that non-trans women are at risk with trans women. Do you feel like that?
I don't feel like a risk. I mean,
Sure.
I feel like if I went in the men's bathroom, that would be a risk to me, like I mean, I
Why do
also
you
find
think
it,
that?
well, I I yeah, I there's some like stuff in my personal life that's happened to me where I have to be more careful around men. Um
Understood.
Yeah.
yeah, but
So would you say, and I don't know, this is sometimes an argument I hear, is that the reason why trans women don't want to be in male spaces is for the same reason that non-trans women don't want to be in male spaces.
yep, 100%.
So
Yeah,
that's kind
yeah,
of where
I think
you
that's right.
fit. I'm not trying to like,
Yep,
feed you
100%.
thoughts, but I was just curious. I've heard
Yeah,
that before.
but yeah, it's also just I want people to be normal. Like this is weird. Like arresting me for like washing my hands is weird. I want to go back to like early 2000s America when people were like eating cigarettes and smoking apple pie. Like I miss that America. Like like I don't really buy the claim that I'm like a threat. Like it's also just like such a weird group to do it about because you could do it about other groups maybe and you could be somewhat successful, but like you know who's a threat to women? Like these limp-wristed like flamers. Yeah. These like trans women who are all these like flamboyant gay men before they transition. Those people are dangerous to women. I just don't really buy that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I mean imagine like who's gonna rape women? Gay men. Those people are a danger. It's like I don't really believe these flamers are really dangerous. And I mean, most trannies were flamers before they transitioned. And
Sort of, like, back to what Joe was saying, so obviously, like, when I look at you and I think when when anyone, any sort of like person who is cis sees someone that looks like you and they say like, should this person use the men's washroom and the women's washroom? And even if they know you're trans, they'd probably be like, ah, she's fine. And, clearly
The
like,
exception. Yeah.
yeah, like, I think the challenge when you're passing laws is you can't say, well, you can use the washroom if you look like Marcy, but if you don't look like Marcy, you can't. And so one of the challenges is because, like all people, trans people come in
maybe
different
that
shapes,
should be the
different
law.
sizes. Pardon?
Maybe only me. I should be the exception
Oh
to
my
one.
God, that's
No, I'm
funny.
kidding.
And for our
Yeah,
listeners, Laura's from Canada, so she says washroom. Just know that that means a
yeah, when I say
bathroom.
washroom, I mean bathroom.
I just keep
Yeah.
teasing her about it because she keeps
Those
saying
are
it.
interchangeable. Is that only a Canadian thing? I say washroom.
Well, Joe was telling me before that Americans say bathroom, and
You
Typically,
both
Canadians
say
yeah.
say it's not.
both. We say both.
Well,
You say both?
the bills
Okay.
and the bans are always bathroom bans, bathroom
The bathroom
bills.
man. But
Yeah.
we'll get into like the soda and pop
Yeah.
thing
I mean,
later,
water
and we'll
closet, right? We could do that. We could just
we can
say
do
water
water closet and
closet.
just go right to British.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm thinking is like, you're a young person. You
Yes,
are someone
I'm 20.
who, yeah, you're someone who has your whole life in front of you. And I remember when I was transitioning when I was young, part of it was like, I don't want to make a story of myself because I've got this whole life to lead and I want to eventually blend in. I want to eventually just go on
Yeah.
and live my life. And I don't want all this trans baggage behind me. And so people would sometimes say, when I was transitioning, it's like, oh, why don't you come speak at the medical school? Why don't you come do this? And I'm like, thanks, but no, thanks for asking, but no thanks. I'm trying to keep a low profile so that when I'm done, I can just move on with things. And I imagine one of the hard parts about this, and where I think a lot of the push and pull comes with being, as you describe it, with being a normie, is being active. We need to be active because we want, you
Yeah.
said it perfectly yourself before about how you wanted it to be someone who would come across the general population as being relatable. And you don't want it to be someone who's coming across and being unrelatable, where it's like, yeah, they should have arrested that person because they're strange or they're acting strangely. That's exactly the kind of person we don't want in the washroom. But you said you decide to step up. And I think a lot of times we feel this push and pull between I just want to blend into the background and live my life and be a normal
Mhm.
girl, normal woman, and having to step up and actually lead, which is kind of what you did there.
Yeah.
So what was it that was going through your mind when you're like, um, like I'm like, did you ever think about what am I, it's important that I'm this person, but do you ever think about like what you're giving up?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but I don't know, I'm also like an open book, and I think it's not to throw stones from glass houses because I live in a glass fucking house, but I do think I do think it would be kind of cowardly of me to, I hang out with very religious people, with very conservative people, and
Me too.
it would be very easy for me to just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna hide that I'm trans," because I that's such an easy way out. The hard thing to say is, yeah, I'm gonna embrace it. I'm not gonna make it my personality because that's
Yeah,
cringe. But I'm gonna be honest. If yeah, I'm a trone. Yeah, I'm a try. And just
yeah,
embrace it and love it. And, like it's okay.
Amen,
Yeah,
yeah.
sister.
Yeah.
yeah,
So you were someone. So you weren't stealth. You were someone who was sort of publicly, like your friends know your friends know your
yeah.
history.
I think it's the greatest way to make change in your personal lives. I feel like all these people, like what I did was important to make change. But we could end transphobia tomorrow if we all had like a million friends. And we're just like, yeah, I'm chill. I kind of exist for a lot of people. I think is like, have you guys ever read like Tom Sawyer or whatever, where they're like,
Yeah.
or Huckleberry Finn, where he talks about his black friend, um, and he says that he's white on the inside. And I think there's a lot of people who I know, like, who kind of think of me like that as like, oh, I'm generally not cool with trannies, but Marcy's cool. I like Marcy, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
I think I'm making a change in that way. Yeah.
That's very
Yeah. No,
interesting. Yeah. Sorry, Marcy, because my parents, I grew up very homeschooled, conservative, religious,
Mm-hmm.
Christian, and all of that. And I remember my dad, when he was telling me he was voting for Trump the second time, they won't ban trans military. They won't ban them, like, because they'll see you as the exception. They'll see you in your service record. I said, but Dad, if everyone actually knew a normal trans person like me or the ones that are serving, there would be thousands of exceptions. Like, it wouldn't be the exception, it would actually be the way it's supposed to be, and the exceptions would be the radicals. And I think it's starting to click with him now that that's kind of how this is, and that he's been fed from, obviously plenty of sources like we see Fox News or anywhere, that trans people are unstable nuts, and it's just not true.
yeah. No, absolutely. And like I really appreciate the story about being sort of more publicly trans, but making
Mm-hmm.
that not part of your personality, because we know that one of the most important things that increases public acceptance, like that really bends the curve in terms of am I likely to support or oppose anti-trans legislation, is do you actually know someone that you can relate to? And
Mm-hmm.
this is, you're kind of walking the walk. And I started in 2000, and when we were there, it was like we were told like you have to completely de-stress this out of your life. I mean, yeah, you don't want to talk about this. If you can really separate your past life and your previous and your your upcoming life, move to a new town, take a new name, like tell as few people as possible, just go on and be things, which makes it very hard when you're living in that kind of world to come out and be like all these people, all these friends you make, and all your, especially when you have kids, you're part of a community, and to be all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, I'm trans. So I really think it's so important and great. And I don't know if this is common among younger people now to be just, I'm trans, but so what? As opposed to something that we've always, like for me, that I kept hidden for a long time. So you have this platform now. I was mentioning before, when I reached out to you on Twitter or on X, I think you had like 6 followers, and I might have been
You're the first reacher outer.
I was the first reacher outer. And
we popped Marcy's cherry.
Yeah, and I said, I really want to hear Marcy's story. And as you know, when you do something like this and it gets into the general press, all of a sudden everybody wants a piece of you. And you've got an opportunity here to really do something positive and really get the story out. When you did this, I guess my first question is, were you anticipating this kind of response where, major media would be reaching out to you, never mind us, but where major media would be reaching out to you, everyone wants a piece of your story. And have you been given any thought to like how you're going to use this opportunity? Like, how are you going to stretch this 15 minutes into 15 hours, 15 days, 15 years? What have you been thinking about that?
I'm just going to go on a lot of interviews and stuff. I thought it was either going to be nothing, like nothing was going to happen, or like I would get arrested and no one would give a shit, or like everyone would give a shit. And it kind of seems like, whoa, everyone's giving a shit. And I didn't really understand what that was like. And like, people are messaging me saying I'm their hero, and I'm like, dude, I'm 20, I'm an idiot.
It's
like,
weird, isn't it?
Hero.
It's so weird. Well, keep yourself surrounded by people that keep you grounded.
People be calling me tranny park or whatever.
Yeah, but keep yourself surrounded by people who keep you grounded, because I can tell you, having a routine, just as someone who just did this 2 months ago, like people calling me hero and all that crazy shit, I'm just like, what? If you don't keep those trusted voices around you, the media will try to push you in a certain direction. So I would just say, listen to your instinct, listen to yourself, and listen to those close people around you that knew you before all of this happened. Just as like a general guidance. But I wanted to get into little details. So you approached the bathroom. There were police officers standing outside, and I got some of this from the Miami Herald. They arrest you because you're in there. What happened after that? Like, walk us through a little bit. Like, did they put you in a cell by yourself, or did they put you with men or women, or
they put me in a
cell
by myself? In the men's block. Yeah.
Oh, so it was in the men's block.
It was in the men's block. Yeah.
Oh wow.
And the police officers were mixed. Most of the officers very, very nice to me. I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for police officers. So
they treated you well, very professional.
Except for one guy. There's this one guy who was like almost laughing. He seemed to like really like get a kick out of me going to jail for being trans, for using the wrong bathroom when I was getting arrested. And yeah, I'll pray for him. You gotta love your enemies. That's what it is.
Amen, sister.
You were talking about your conservative upbringing. Like I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh every day with my dad.
Me too. My dad worked for Pat Robertson at the Christian Broadcasting Network.
Yeah. Not me.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So I want to understand the actual moment a little bit. So, you're in the washroom. You're kind of like, maybe nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to go use the washroom like you've probably done like 100 or 1,000 times before this, and ain't nothing going to happen. Now, of course, you mentioned you alerted all the Congress people in Florida, so they knew you were kind of big bad Marcy Rheintgen's on her way to stir up shit in Florida. So.
By the way, on the sheet of like my crime, it said my crime was against like in the victim part, it said the state of Florida.
Yeah.
The state of Florida was the victim.
Yeah, like all like 21 million of them.
It's like you peed on the state.
Yes, I'll be sure to make up the meme for that. But it's so you walk into the state house and you go into the washroom and are they kind of like waiting there for you, like arms crossed, kind of like blocking the door? Or
they meet me outside of it and they're like, we're gonna trespass you, you can't go in there, you're gonna make big trouble. I'm like, I'm gonna get in big trouble. And it's not exactly word for word, but I like went in there and they told me we're asking you to leave. And I'm like, I say, because I think you have to refuse to leave to break the law. I said, I refuse to leave. And then they said, come with us. And I did, which I mean, I did kind of leave in the end, but
Okay,
it was
so no
just
resistance.
no, no resistance. No.
Yeah.
When I was in handcuffs, I was like talking to the one of the women who was arresting me about her chickens for like an hour.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. So very peaceful. It was more of a formality that you had to go in there. They had to
Mhm.
say leave, and you had to say no. That way, it was
Mhm.
all by the book. It sounds like they weren't trying to get you. They were just following the law, and they were doing their job, and you were doing what you were there to do.
Yeah. Jail was
Well,
horrible though. It was so
Yeah.
gross and like silver. It was like a silver toilet, and like the meat tasted really like ooh, and like it was so unclean, and like everything like it just everything was barred. Like it was like a prison in the movies. Like there was bars everywhere. There was like guard towers. There was like barbed wire. And there's like the one phone call. Like everything was like the movies, and it was like
Really?
horrible because I thought it was gonna be like I was gonna get like a little baby bitch prison, but I got like a serious like fuck you prison, and I was like, damn.
Did you get in touch with like a public defender, or did you already have someone in mind for that one phone call?
Uh, I I called a bail bond officer, and
Nice.
they said what they wouldn't loan to me because I was outside of town. And they called I said, wait, call my parents, see if they can help you out. Because they said they could, if my parents had the money, they could get me. And then my parents were like, yeah, you know what? You went to jail. We're not bailing you out. You gotta see the judge tomorrow.
Oh
And so
wow.
oh, your parents didn't bail you out?
That's what
they
my
didn't bail
parents
me out.
would do too, though. That's what's so funny is
Teach me a
it sounds like we
lesson.
come to the same
Oh,
household almost. Like that's so crazy.
I'd get bailed out, but there'd be like so much guilt that would have to come along. I'd be paying I'd be paying my bail in Jewish guilt, basically, with because it'd be like,
Hey,
how stupid
I'm
are
gonna
you?
go
Why would
Jewish
you do such
guilt.
a stupid thing? How long were you in for?
I've been for like 25 hours.
25 hours. Like, are they actually charging you? Like, do you have to go to court? Is this
Oh,
like,
I'm going to go to court. Yeah, I could go to prison, like long term. I could
Right.
get my head and be in a men's prison where I would likely be raped.
okay, so
Shit.
this is like serious. This isn't like something to joke. Like, so
Yeah, this isn't. Yeah.
yeah. So
Um.
Yeah, I was reading it was like a misdemeanor they can charge you with in up to like 60 days. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Jeez.
I don't know if you guys saw my mugshot, by the way. It's on the Twitter.
yeah, no,
Look
I
gorgeous.
saw it. It's actually, as mugshots go, I will take that one any day of the week. But just to get serious here, because like you brought up an important point. Like jails are like you were there for 25 hours. It was gross and it was dirty and you got served bad food, but that's just the beginning. If there's potentially real consequences here for this act of protest, there's a chance that you might have to spend more time and more serious time. And one of the things you mentioned that Florida is one of those states, and like many states, that if you go to jail, you're going to have to go, or you may end up in a men's prison. And earlier we were talking about, um, I want to sort of understand a little bit about, what your thoughts are on policy, because part of the reason that these laws or these have been raised or been put in place and why people have raised concerns about them, there's been obviously a number of cases, a number of high-profile cases where people who have transitioned, were living as men, transitioned to live as women and were imprisoned, where they got put in women's prisons and committed acts that violated the rights of other women. And how do you reconcile that? Because obviously, I look at you and I'm like, you clearly have no place in a men's prison. That's obvious to me. That's obvious to anyone who would look to you, and obvious to anyone who would talk to you. Um, how can we reconcile this where with the concerns that I think many people have about trans people in general, going
I,
ending up
I think it
in
should be
prison?
like, I think it should be, they should have a selective policy in that some trans women can. I don't think sex offenders should. I'd be very skeptical of murderers. I think maybe I think white collar crimes or stuff like what I did, like trespassing, which is technically what I did. Like, I don't think I should be in a men's prison for that, but I think people who are rapists should not be in a women's prison. You know, I just think
Interesting.
that's a horrible idea. Um,
So it could be up to the judge almost.
yeah, actually, that would be,
Yeah,
or we could
or the
just sort of
prison
have like
system.
some rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's generally the system we
because
had in place for a while, except, obviously it probably got misused, or there was some bad judgments on the part of prison personnel to put people who were clearly dangerous. But, I agree with you. Like, I don't have a criminal record. Full disclosure. I've never been arrested. I've never been to court. And I figure if I ever get arrested for something, it's going to be for like Martha Stewart shit. It's going to be like, it's something along those lines. And I'm just thinking, if I end up being like the trans Martha Stewart, like I probably shouldn't be going to a men's prison either. But I think you're right. Like most things involving trans policy, when you say everything has to be this way, we have to be all inclusive, or everything has to be all forbidden, those kind of policies don't
you can
work,
have
which is why we
nuance.
really want to talk about it like smart people.
Yeah.
Like everybody's different.
We need to
Everybody's
prevent the
different.
most rape. We need to stop rape. Like,
Yeah,
because if I go into men's
exactly.
prison, I get raped. But if we put a rapist in with women's prison, like that also going to be rape.
Right.
Like we need to stop. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, Marcy, that it should be levied based on the type of crime, right? Like I think a lot of people, it's black and white thinking, and a lot of trans policies are all or nothing. And the other issue is folks like Laura, like, oh, I'm not going to break any law. Say if she was in the U.S., what if the bathroom thing existed in every state, and then Laura's getting arrested because someone knew that she was on X and that she's openly trans and she's in the bathroom, like, and now Laura's going to one of these prisons like you're describing, and now all of us are being lumped in and being criminalized just for being trans. What are your thoughts on like it being illegal to be trans, almost like if they keep moving these
Yeah.
laws closer, right? Is there a fear in your part that this could escalate even further than just bathrooms?
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, bathroom is the first step because it is sort of making it illegal to be trans without explicitly doing it. And then later on, people would argue, well, we already did this and it was fine. Things are good. So why don't we do that next? I mean, Michael Knowles gave a speech at CPAC a couple years ago saying we need to eradicate transgenderism. And he says, oh, we don't really mean eradicate transgender people. We just mean transgenderism. And I think that's such bullshit because obviously you can't legally say we want to eradicate transgender people. But
Right.
that's the goal. That's the goal of a lot of these people. And that's probably, I don't know, if we don't do stuff, like that's what's going to happen. And like,
Right.
I'm not like, I used to be sort of like very skeptical of the sort of fear mongering from a lot of trans people on the left. And I
Same.
wouldn't consider myself on the left or the right. I'm more centrist, but I just, I think a lot of it could end with us dying. I've seen really just ugly stuff used about us, and I think like I've seen like in my replies, I see a lot of people saying like that like if they were there, they would have killed me, and I'm
Right.
just like that's like that's a real sentiment, and it's like I sort of see it like anti-Semitism is like it shouldn't be ignored, and it's like I think the 4chanification of Twitter is a real problem because I
That's
just want
so
people to be
true.
normal. Like
That's so true. I had people just saying the same thing, like, "Oh, it's a shame that you weren't the one who died in the helicopter crash." Like, they want a lot of people. I think at least keyboard warriors definitely want us dead. I wanted to ask another question. Just mention, at least in the Miami Herald, it quoted you saying that you regretted your decision. It's been days since that article, and probably even more since you said that. Do you still regret it? Do you still regret
um,
it, or what are your thoughts now? Has it changed?
well, I mean, the reporter asked me that like the next day after I was like crying in my car, like being in jail. But I mean, it's easy now because like I'm out of jail. Then it'd be like, oh, I don't regret it. Screw this, fuck the system. Screw these people trying to arrest us away. But I mean, that was really horrible. But if it ends up meaning something, which it seems like it ends up doing, I'd be willing to go to bat for the trans community. I'd be willing to go to prison for the trans community if it can, like, actually stop worse things from happening to us. I said at the start of this interview, I realize that if I don't go to jail now, I'm going to go to jail later.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't take that lightly.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really great way to put it about, if we don't fight now, we're going to be, if we don't take the fight now, take the fight to them now, they're going to take the fight to us later. And, I think there's definitely worse things if we just try to hide in the shadows and just go along with it. These laws are going to keep escalating. And I think you raised a really good point about sort of, like I mentioned before, I'm Jewish, and my grandparents were all Holocaust survivors. My father was born in a camp, immediately after the war, and so the memory of that is, my grandparents have all passed away. My parents are in their late 70s. These stories are, the actual stories are dying out. And I think people are forgetting what happened to the Jews. And it didn't just start with gas chambers. It didn't start with people
Started
being
with
shot in the
public
streets.
benches.
Yeah, it started with laws saying you couldn't go here or you couldn't go there, or you had to wear something to identify yourself as a Jew.
Yep.
And I worry, like you do, very much about the same things. If we kind of just, go with the flow and say, okay, well, it's not that bad yet. Yeah, I can do this. Sure, I can use the men's room. Sure, I can go at home. So I think it's really, brave of you to say this. So one of the last things I want to talk about is, this was an act. It was activism. But it was what I often refer to as polite activism. You went in as, doing a regular person doing regular things. You went to use the washroom, and presumably, if no one else was there, you would have used the washroom exactly as intended. You would have sat down in the toilet, you would have done your business, you would have washed your hands, you would have checked yourself out in the mirror, and you would have walked out. And, um, and a lot of the protest that comes from the trans community has been traditionally much more, let's say, loud and in your face. So one of the things that I remember um, was when Sarah McBride. So you're probably familiar with Sarah McBride. Sarah McBride, the Congresswoman in Delaware, who was the first trans person elected to United States Congress. As soon as she got there,
Could have been me.
Yeah, could have been you. Could have been couldn't have been me as a Canadian.
Coming next.
But coming next with Joe. But that they passed a law specifically to kind of say you or people who are trans who are working in Capitol Hill can't use the washroom. And then there was this protest by some trans activists where they occupied the washroom at the Capitol. But instead of just going in and using it like a washroom, they held a dance party and they started blasting loud music. And they were sort of behaving like if I walked into a
They
washroom.
weren't even that thin. Like they didn't slay. Like if they were like pretty and like cool, but like they weren't even that pretty and cool.
Yeah, that could have redeemed it. But I'm just saying, me as a normie, if I walk in and that's going on, I'm like, I'm just gonna walk on out of here. And I was thinking, like, what an ineffective form of protest, where we're trying to show that we're just normal people using the washroom like everyone else, and they're starting a dance party out there. So
yeah, I wouldn't use a bathroom that has a dance party. Like if I walked in, I'd be like, fuck this. I'm going to call the cops. I'm going to call the cops on that.
Yeah, if that was the theme of the party.
If people were dancing in the bathroom, I wouldn't give a shit. Like,
yeah,
you can dance.
You can dance if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what are your feelings? Yeah. What are your feelings about sort of like how could what are other things we can do that are doing trans activism right that we think can actually get people who aren't trans and who aren't thinking about trans stuff all the time to actually get them on our side instead of like, who are these weirdos?
Just be normal, I think just showing us to be normal, like, we're breaking the law and we're slaying, like, that's it. Yeah, that's yeah. Just like
just live your life.
Yeah. And like, I mean, look at the spectacle. I imagine those people who sponsor the law, I heard they're not responding to like texts or calls from the press anymore. They're like freaked out. Yeah, I think their career might be over because like imagine the attack ads. Like they just like arrested me because I was washing my hands. Like I'm a normie. Like they're just arresting women for washing their hands. Like that's Looney Tunes. We need to show how Looney Tunes it is by just like being normal, getting arrested, doing some good old fashioned civil disobedience.
Yeah,
but I think the trans
good trouble.
Christianity too. They need love. They need to love their enemies. Too many angry Chinese. We need some love in the enemies.
So you think spirituality is a big part of it?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have done this if I wasn't a Christian. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Awesome. Well, we want to give you some time. Laura, did you have anything last minute? We're about 4 minutes out.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think it's always important to talk about, we've been here talking sort of about trans stuff, trans issues, but one of the things that I think is always very important for us to stress is not just, like you said right at the beginning, like being trans is not the most important thing about me. It's a thing. I'm not going to ignore it, but I'm a full-on person and I do regular things. So tell me a little bit about what you like to do when you're not having to talk about being arrested in the bathroom and sort of doing media appearances. What is a typical Marcy day or what is a typical Marcy weekend like?
I probably hang out with people at my youth group. We make zines. Sometimes, like, I hang out with some artsy people in my youth group and make zines. I like to make zines.
What is a zine?
You don't know what a zine is?
I'm 35, so...
I'm
Magazine,
52.
okay. I thought maybe.
Yeah.
It's not a young versus old thing. It's an artsy thing. It's like
It's
it's
an
like little
artsy-
magazines, and you like glue stuff
Oh.
out. Sort of like scrapbooking.
Oh, it's like
But
scrapbook. Okay, now you're talking my
artsy. Like
terms.
yeah, we
Okay.
cut out. Yeah, we like cut stuff out of magazines, and you glue it on, and then you make like little
Okay.
books. I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scrapbooks,
I could
like,
show you some pictures and stuff I did.
That's
no, that'd be
amazing.
really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's sort of like scrapbooking. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Zines are cool, and then you can make your own little art.
Yeah, do you do that with your youth group you said at church?
Yeah, it was my friend.
That's awesome.
Yeah, like that's not our youth group event, but like my friends from our youth group event, like we do that.
Yeah.
We like,
Okay.
but youth group is a lot of fun. Like we play games and stuff, and we pray and like go to Eucharistic adoration. Like I honestly, it's funny when people online paint me as like a trans nut, because if there's any nut I am, it's probably a religious nut, not a trans nut. I spend like all my time at church.
That's a soundbite right there. I love it.
Great. So last thing, like 10 years from now, you're looking back at this. What do you think your life's going to be like, and what do you think you're going to look back at this moment as being?
I never wanted to run for like the Florida State Congress or something, but now I kind of want to. I want to go in that same place where I was. I want to go, and I want to sit next to the people who made it illegal for me, and I want to talk to them, and I want to meet them, because I think if they know me, they wouldn't support this. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned earlier, so the dress you're wearing today, you said was the dress that
This is I got arrested in.
That you got arrested in. And so one thing I just want to say, to close out, first of all, it's a lovely dress. And second of all, if it goes out of style, if it ever does go out of style, or you decide it's not your taste anymore, do not give it to Goodwill. Don't leave it at the Sally Ann. I want you to hang it up, put it in a box, because one day this dress may be hanging in the Smithsonian, and you want it to be in good shape.
You really think so?
I really do think so.
Never know. If not, it's going to mean something to a lot of people.
It's going to mean something to someone. And there's been a lot of iconic dresses throughout history, and this may be joining them. So take good care of that dress.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and God bless. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marcy, for your time, and have a wonderful day. God bless you.
God bless you too, and stay centered. So, I thought that went great today, Joe. This was it was really great to be able to sit down with Marcy and hear her story. I want to thank everybody here. Obviously, I want to thank my co-host Joe for helping me put this together and doing all the planning behind the scenes. And I want to thank everybody who's going to take the time to listen or watch our podcast today. We're going to try to keep doing this in the future. Our goal is to have more exciting guests, more people doing interesting things in the news, people just like Marcy today, but also potentially bring on a lot of normal trans people just living their lives, and and hear what's interesting and about their paths and their journeys and what makes them part of their communities. And so I hope that everybody here will continue to join us in the future, for me and Joe to hear our perspectives about what's going on in trans policy and in the trans world, but also just to hear a lot of really great and interesting stories. So thank you all for joining us today. Joe?
Yeah, I echo exactly what you said. I'm really excited to have interesting people on. I'm also excited to just talk about the news of the day, especially when it comes to radical trans activism, which we're trying to present a better idea than that, something that's centrist minded. And so I'm really looking forward to doing that with you, and also just chatting and having a good time. I love podcasting and chit chatting and stuff, but I also hope that we can offer something that's better than what's currently out there on the extremes.
Yeah, no, I have to agree, Joe. Like, after spending a lot of time trying to talk to people at the extremes and getting super frustrated with making no progress, I think it's great to be able to sit here on a regular basis and talk to someone like yourself, who, even though, like I said, we come from different backgrounds, we might have different political beliefs, but that we can really come together and really focus on what works and where the future might be. So thanks for coming along on this journey with me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and bye, everyone.